Sierra is in all pink and I am in all black, and it just makes a lot of sense for the episode we're recording.
It does.
With just the cynic and the romantic. Welcome to Red Vine Reads, a community of book lovers talking about our favorite and not so favorite books while pouring a glass or two of wine. I'm your host, Jenna Weston, and with me today is Sierra Marshall. Now, before we start, I should warn you that we do spoil the endings of the books we review, so if you don't like that, then please go finish the book and come right back to this episode, or find another episode where you've read the book and you want to join in on the conversation. So here's what you can expect from every episode. We start with a super short 60-second summary and some quick facts about the book and the author to get you oriented with the book that we will be reviewing for today's episode. Then we will answer the simple question, would you recommend this book? And answer with a simple yes or no. There are no maybes here. We will spend the majority of the episode arguing why or why not we would recommend this book, and we will end the show with final ratings out of 5 stars and pairings, where we will pick drinks, TV shows, movies, and other books that might pair well with today's read. Each episode also hosts its own drinking game, so whatever your drink of choice, wine, cocktails, mocktails, coffee, water, we hope that you'll sip along with us. Now, today we are reading and reviewing The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I was super excited about this one because, one, I had not read any of Leigh Bardugo's books, but had only heard great things about them, and two, the cover of this book, absolutely spectacular. Chef's kiss, so beautiful. So when Sierra decided to put this book on our list, I thought it would be the perfect book to read during October, during spooky season, and really enjoy. We got together and we had some varying opinions on different sides of the spectrums when it came to this book, but in any case, it was a great conversation about a book that left some varying reviews, but also a book that we do want to come back to in the future. So without further ado, let's pull some corks and get reading. This week we read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Sierra, welcome to a very special Sunday afternoon recording of Red Vine Reads. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready for this conversation.
Yeah. Well, what are you drinking today as we discuss The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo?
Well, it's not October anymore, but I am drinking a Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Sam Adams.
Yeah, we're close enough.
Samuel.
By Samuel. Great. I made myself, because I was gonna make something with like pomegranate or like something red, but then one, I didn't want to open up I didn't want to open a bottle of wine, because again, it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon here, so I would be asleep. And then two, I have a pomegranate in there, but like that's a whole ordeal. That's gonna take me an hour and a half to cut open, you know? So then I decided to go with like a dark drink, and so I went with a rum and coke in a fun little glass.
Period.
Mm-hmm. Long explanation to tell you what I was drinking. That's where
okay.
we're at. All right, so some drinking games for this episode. I put 2 in here. Let me know if any pop into your head as we're going through this, but my 2 drinking game rules is drink every time we have questions about the magical rulings of this world, like how the magic works. I have a lot. So,
okay.
and then drink every time we try to figure out why this book is titled The Familiar, because I also have some questions.
Okay.
Are there anything
I can
you
help you with some of those?
Okay.
But I'm ready.
All right, Sierra, 60-second recap of The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo.
Okay. This book follows a girl named Louisa who is a scullion, and I think that's how you say it. Sure, we're gonna go with that. I'm dyslexic, so anyway. Louisa is a scullion, and she happens to be a Jewish scullion, which at the time of the Spanish Inquisition is a big no-no. And nobody knows, thank God, because we're trying to save her life. Anyway, she also has magical powers, and she essentially can kind of use her powers to undo kind of like very simple things on top of other things that she can do, but she hasn't really explored it. She just has to sing, and then these things can happen. It's like a chant or something. And her, I don't know, like her mistress ends up finding out that she has these powers, that she can do this, and so she kind of uses her as a prop to, I don't know, like bring in more people to her house and make herself more popular among the people. Then some higher ups in the Spanish kingdom, whatever, I don't know, they like try to, or they're trying to look for people who can do miracles, and she has to be in this competition with other people, and that is mostly what happens.
That's good.
It's a terrible summary.
I think it's funny because I feel like your summaries spend so much on just who the characters are, and then it's like, and then chaos happens, and then it's a thing, and then
it happens. I didn't even use the guy's name.
It's okay.
It's okay.
All right. Well, quick facts of this book. So, quick facts about The Familiar. It was published in this year, 2024. It has a 3.8 out of 5 on Goodreads and also on the Storygraph, so fairly, neutral review there. It is #1 national bestseller, indie bestseller, a New York Times bestseller, and it was on a bunch of like the most anticipated books of 2024 lists from any publication, you name it. Leigh Bardugo, why it was one of the most anticipated books is she is a very famous author who published the very popular Shadow and Bone trilogy, Six of Crows duology, and then another duology which they combined into some world which I'm forgetting the name of, but they're creating a series on Netflix, so Shadow and Bone, you can find it there. She is also known for her adult novels Ninth House and then its sequel Hellbent. Fun fact, just read Ninth House in October because I wanted to read spooky books only, so that was one of the lineup, and I have thoughts. So she now lives in LA and is just writing her little heart out and doing a lot of screenplays. So, honestly, living the life.
Go girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's get into it. The Familiar. Would you recommend it? Yes? No?
Oh, for sure. I actually have already recommended it to a couple people. I really enjoyed the book.
Awesome. I said no.
Oh, no!
Yeah. I have reasons, and I genuinely think I'll come back to this book. But here are my reasons. I think the plot for me was really convoluted. There were like a lot of characters to keep track of, and I did not keep track of them very well. And I think it's because I read it in like very segmented bits, and I never had enough time to like get into it and get to know the characters. So I think I struggled with that. Didn't love Lucia as the main character as well. And then to me, again, the magical rules didn't really make sense. It almost felt like I needed a history lesson before I went into this book, which is fine. I'm happy to explore it. But I think my first reading through it, I did not enjoy the actual physical act of reading this book at all. So, yeah.
I think that's the difference between you and I. Like, I sat down and I read the book throughout the whole thing, so it's a little bit easier to keep track of everything that was going on. Because it is such a detailed book, and it does have a lot of like historical significance, I would say. Yeah. Yes, and we'll get into that. So for what sparkled, this will be great because I want to know what you loved about it, why you would recommend it, all of the things. So I really enjoy that it is like a historical fiction. I always kind of like that. It helps me kind of, on top of like if you go and do your own research, like I did know about the Spanish Inquisition, but like knowing a little bit more, kind of getting some context, and I think it kind of helps you live in that moment and kind of, I don't know, kind of piece together like what was going on at the time. Like we hear about it, we know what the Spanish Inquisition is, but do we really know? And I think that's like part of this book. It is like, I will say like a small part of this book, but I think a really important part of this book. And then what else made this book sparkle? I actually really liked the it's not a lot of romance, but I really enjoyed what romance that they did have in it. 'Cause like even with like fade, more or less like fade to black scenes, I was still like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then I think I really liked, it's just such a different direction that I would have anticipated for like going off of just the title of the book, like what I would have thought it was about versus what it is about. And so that was like really interesting, I think, for me.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I think where I went wrong just right off the bat was the title, thinking it was something different. And so I was like going into it fully expecting a completely different novel. One of maybe vampires, one of maybe like more, I don't know, like mythical lore that way, rather than kind of more of like a magic based novel. And I think, but like going off of it, the cover, most beautiful cover I've ever seen in my entire life.
I know, it's
like
so
it's
gorgeous.
so good. Yeah, I don't know. I think I think the competition part was very interesting, and I liked that whole section of like them being in the competition and like things going wrong and them trying to figure it out. I loved the like cast of characters that were like in the competition. I thought that was really interesting. I did love the lesbian awakening for our girl Valentina. I was like, get it, girl. Get out of that terrible marriage. I love it.
Me too.
So I loved that. But I think, yes, I'll stop there because that's what sparkled for me. I really did. I love the idea of it. And again, that's why I think I'll come back to this next year.
Right.
Because I do want to read it again because I think I messed it up. That's my fault. But it also might be a disconnect between me and Leigh because I guess I'll get into what fell flat for me because why not? We're already here. But when I read Ninth House, I found myself kind of falling into the same thing where she, like, for me, over-explains things. And, like, the characters are, like, constantly repeated. And, like, she goes on, like, these long paragraphs about, like, the feeling of a dress or, like, the look of this thing. And for me, I get really lost, like, for fantasy novels especially. Like, I'm reading, like, another book that's more, like, day in the life, like, more contemporary fiction, and that kind of thing doesn't really bug me in contemporary fiction. But for fantasy, for some reason, my brain just, like, can't compute when it's not just, like, action, action, action.
Right.
And so, like, again, I think it's really just a me and Leigh disconnect that we have. Because I also feel like I felt this way with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Like, everybody freaking loved that book. And for me, it was like a slog. Like, I could not get through it. And I think I felt that way with The Familiar. Because I just, like, every time I was sitting down, I kept, like, reacquainting myself with the characters. And that was really hard for me. So I think that's, like, because I read this, like, over the course of 2-3 weeks, like, little bits at a time. And I think that's where I went wrong.
Yeah, I read it like in the course of 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that's like, there's a lot of information to process. Like, when you're talking about fantasy, you're talking about the magic system, you're talking about like these characters, and a lot of them, like, if they're in, like, this isn't specifically in a different language, but like a lot of it uses like names that we're not so familiar with. And so, like, I think descriptions of characters and who plays who, like, I even got, like, the two, I don't even remember their names exactly.
Yes.
The two guys who are kind of, like, in charge.
Yeah, because she even says, like, the character even says they're interchangeable. Like, they look the same. They're the same.
Right.
And so you're like...
So I'm, like, also, like, yeah, I'm, like, I think I know which one you're talking about, but I'm not 100% sure. And I think, like, that also is for me, like, maybe I should have made myself a little guide. Who is who? Like, which one are we talking about? But it was a little confusing with, like, who is in charge of, like, which one, I guess, was kind of, like, owner, which I don't like to use that word, but, like, owned Centangel, or however you say his name.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think Perez was like
right.
his.
I think you're right. But
But
it's
then
like
the other guy,
it gets confusing when you're within the competition, I think.
yeah. And I think I reached my point where she's being confronted by Perez, like, after the competition, and they're trying to escape, and she's being, like, confronted by him. And I literally had to, like, I was listening to this part because, like, I was on the metro, and I was like, okay. And then I was like, I feel like I missed something. Like, and then I tried to, like, pick it back up after I, like, was coming home, and I was like, I missed something. So I re-listened to, like, the 3 chapters before, and I was like, I still don't get it. And I was like, what is not, like, it's not clicking for me. But then, like, if I were on a run or I was walking for, like, an hour and I had, like, an hour with it, I became really fascinated with it and, like, wanted to read it. So for anyone who's also in my position who is not, like, a trained fantasy reader and, like, needs help, I would just, like, sit with it. Like, you need just block 4 hours for
or
3
more.
days. Well, like, for multiple days.
Yeah.
No, not one sitting. Like, I can't even do that. And, like, read it and digest it. Which is why, like, I want to come back to it. Because, I think that idea is so fascinating. And I love the setting of it. And I love the characters of it. But, like, the rules of magic didn't make sense to me in the sense of, like... So... So Lucia has her, like, innate powers, and she can channel them by singing. Mm-hmm. Then the really pretty girl
was a fraud.
So how did she do that then? How did she break the glasses and put them back together?
That's a great question. I think it's like smoke and mirrors, more or less.
Okay.
Like, hers is like just a really, really good magic trick. Like... like us type of magic trick. Like, it's even later on, I don't know that they ever actually explain the glass trick, but I'm assuming it's just like smoke and mirrors. So, like, let's say there's a mirror behind her, the glass breaks, and then, like, you can take it away, and then there are completed new glasses. It's like a puff of smoke, something along those lines, I would say. Whereas like Louisa's is real. Like, she has these powers. She hears these incantations in her head, or they just kind of, like, come to her, and she can do these magical things.
Okay. And then are there more like Lucia? Or, no, I'm saying it. Lucia?
I think, like, theoretically, yes. Obviously, like, we don't necessarily meet any, like, specifically like her.
Okay.
I would say the closest is the King of Olives, or whatever his name is.
Oh, yeah, the music guy.
Yeah, I would think his is, like, pretty similar to hers.
And his was, like, channeled into, like, a jewel that he wore on a necklace, because when that broke, he didn't have it.
I think it's, he might have had his own, like, power, but I think it amplified his power to be able to do these amazingly grand things. Like, I think he had that innate ability to, like, somewhat... I would say, like, control people's, like, emotions and feelings, but when you had that gem, it, like, amplifies it and makes it, like, this extraordinary, like, power, is what I gathered. I could be wrong. But I think I'm right.
And then you have the prophet, who giving me orphan vibes, but, like, oh well.
Kind of. Yeah, I would agree.
But so are her powers real? Like,
she speaks with angels, supposedly. So, yes, I would say hers are real, because she's like the one who was already put in jail. She has these premonitions, these predictions that come to her. They think they're unholy, however.
Okay.
Theoretically, they're not.
Okay. You can tell I have a lot of questions. So then what, so she was talking about something to do with, like, the religion aspect of it.
Right.
So, like, what was she kind of yelling about on her way out?
I think a lot of Louisa's powers and everything, the reason, like, she's not supposed to be singing them or saying them out loud, I think because they're derivative of, like, Jewish text or Sanskrit and different things like that, which are not Catholic. And so inherently during this time, like evil, quote unquote, which not true. Like I think they even said something about like Hebrew and Sanskrit, and then I think they said like Arabic, Latin. Different stuff like that. So
okay, yeah, because I did read something in a book review where they talked about like the Jewish tradition of like singing different things out of as part of tradition, like, so like bringing that into play,
right. Well, I think it just goes back to like these really ancient languages were around far before like Latin or Spanish or something like that, where you could have these beginning languages kind of be the basis of this kind of magic that she has, but she's not allowed to necessarily use it because Latin and Spanish, that's all you should be really speaking. I guess maybe English, but
got it. Okay, that helps clarify this a lot. And then I would love to discuss something with you, and that is the ending of this book. So if you haven't taken it already, this is we have spoiled the entire book, but like we will spoil the ending here. But okay, so his curse is he can't, like, he brings the luck. He's tied to the life of Perez.
Yes,
I think Perez. And so if he is not with him before the sun goes down, or before the sun comes up, he goes poof. And so at the end, is he just going poof and she just brings him back every single day?
Listen, I told my mom when I was talking about this, because like I know Jenna's going to ask about this. I was like, I just know Jenna and I know she's going to ask about this. Okay, so I know there's like a chapter where he's talking about she's like, well, why would he want to like capture me? Like if I don't take, like, essentially, like, if she decides not to, because, like, they had this conversation, President Saint Angel or whatever, they had this, I really can't say his name, it's fine.
It's okay.
Because I haven't heard
Just
it.
call him
like,
Saint
really.
Angel.
Anyway, Saint Angel. Angel boy.
Angel boy.
Anyway, he was like, well, even if she doesn't decide to take my place, essentially, he was like, well, that won't necessarily matter as long as she's like essentially like with me in this way. Like if I can essentially have both of you, she can kind of like reverse time for herself, but again, it will also work for him. They talk about that in like a specific chapter. I can't remember which chapter. I should have written it down. But I didn't know it would be important till later. Anyway. Yeah. So, yes, every single day, he's not with him or his family. Will forever live, right?
Yeah.
So he goes away from his quote unquote master or whoever is over him, Perez, and his lineage. The luck is essentially taken away from Perez.
Yeah.
And he can live his life, but knowing that like next day comes, he turns to dust. But she, like with the bread, she like reverses time for him essentially, and he gets to live a whole new life again. And you don't have to worry about her aging because she can essentially like reverse age herself every single day, so she doesn't age either.
I hate that. I hate it so much.
I think it's so romantic.
No, see, I think it would have been way more romantic if like they had that last night together.
No, and then, I didn't want them to die. I would have been so angry.
Oh, I wanted it. I wanted it to be like...
I did not.
I wanted to be like
I don't want them to be martyrs.
Like, they accept it. And
no, I didn't want Romeo and Juliet.
I just think it's... Sorry, it's just so stupid. I'm like, it's like 51st dates. He just goes poof. And then she's like, okay, run it back. Run the tapes back. And he's back. I don't know.
I think it's sweet and romantic.
Well, here we go.
She can live forever. And now they get to see the world together, and she doesn't have to live such a short life and a life full of nothing. She actually gets to, like, live her dreams and fulfill that. And
well, see, Yes, that's sweet, yes. But, like, I would have much preferred it be, like, he goes poof, they have this, like, wonderful moment together, and then, like, he goes poof, and then she, like, lives her life, and then she passes on.
I would have actually much rather this been a 2, like, book series. Because I think it would have been interesting for them to have gotten away, but to kind of figure out how they can both break the spell and... it's neither here nor there.
Honestly, though, if she would have, like, broken it up into 2 and almost put, like have it end on the competition where they're, like, trying to escape and he gets shot with, like, a ton of arrows, and, like, have it end there, and then, like, pick up the next book, kind of, and have it be a little bit more expansive on, like, the actual competition itself, and kind of, like, do a little bit more world building at the front end of things. Like, I don't know, maybe it could have been an interesting play, but also
I just really would have liked 2 books. Because I really want him to, like, I really wanted him not to be under this kind of, like, familiar type spell. I would have really enjoyed him for
him to
be free of it.
Okay, so this brings me to my last question, which I really appreciate you answering all my questions, because I am this is why you read books with friends, everyone, because you may think you don't understand it, but then you have somebody who explains it to you like you're a little baby. Okay.
Take a drink, Jenna.
Take a drink. I know I've been drinking this entire time because I just keep asking questions. I do want to take a moment. Sorry for those who are listening, you can't see us, but Sierra is in all pink and I am in all black, and it just makes a lot of sense for the episode we're recording. With just the cynic and the romantic. But anyways.
That's so funny.
Okay, my last question is, okay, why is it called The Familiar?
Okay, so research. Are you ready? Okay.
Yes.
Let me get this. Okay.
She has her notes.
Okay. So, definition of a familiar. It is a supernatural creature that serves as serves a witch, a member of high official's household, or someone who is well known. I would say, like, the high official household, whatever. Okay. He, Santangel, Mr. Angel Boy, Mr. White Hair, Mr. Handsome Face. He is the familiar. He is, like, inherently, when you think about, like, witches or like familiars, they tend to be an animal, like a crow, an owl, a raven, something similar, a frog sometimes, I think, a cat, whatever. He is the scorpion. He is our familiar. So he is the one, he serves the household. It's his duty to be, like, in service of this, in service of Perez and his family throughout generations, because he gave up that power. So when he went to that guy and he was like, I want to live forever, I want to explore all these things, I want to learn all this information, he gave that up, and in return, he had to be in service of Perez and his family and his lineage. And so he became the familiar in this book.
Okay.
So it's not Louisa or however you say her name, I can't remember. But it's not her. It would be him. And that's why, like, in the cover, you see the little scorpion.
Yeah.
So that's him.
Okay, well, the definition makes sense, but I just think, I don't know. I kept calling it, like, whenever I would try to type it, I kept calling it the labyrinth for some reason.
That's so funny.
And I was like, why is it never coming up? Because it's familiar. But because, like, it still didn't click with my brain that, like, familiar in this book go together, because you think familiar, you think of, like, Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows. Yes. Like, you think of, like a familiar to a vampire. So I think
right. Well, see, like, the opposite for me, I always think of it as a familiar to a witch.
Oh,
I've never thought of them as, like, a familiar to a vampire. I've always thought, like, when you have a familiar, it's typically, like, witchcraft. They have, like a cat or a rat or
Yeah.
a bat, which is so funny. An owl,
A cat,
a raven,
rat, a
a
bat.
crow. Like, that's always what I think of, but...
Yeah. No, I guess also, yeah, teenage, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I also
Yeah.
thought of that as well.
Salem.
But, okay. I don't know. I just got, as you can tell, this book left me with way more questions than it did answers.
I see, and then, like, for me, I think that was the difference. I think, like, if you sat down and you really, were there to kind of take in the whole thing, I think it makes a lot more sense. Whereas, like, if you break it up, it's easy to forget, like, little tidbits of information that end up being important later on. And
yeah,
I don't know. I loved all the characters in this book, so I think that's what made it a lot easier for me. And girl, I knew. The moment we met him, I was like, white hair? It's either dark hair or it's white hair. And very rarely is it blonde. I mean white hair. Or dark hair. And then you're like, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. We can't have any Tamlin looking hoes up in this bitch.
No. And also, like, a little bit of this book reminded me of Throne of Glass, and, like, including his character. So I think that's really interesting.
Okay. Well, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? Any last thoughts that I didn't touch on?
Let me get you my favorite quote from this book.
Here you go.
I thought it was really interesting and, like, very true to this story, but also I think true to women throughout history. And I think it was a really important quote from this book. And it asks, "Are you not afraid of the devil or of his minions?" And it says, "Fear men, Louisa," he said. "Fear their ambition and their crimes they commit in its service, but don't fear magic or what you may do with it." And I think, like, if that is not just the most, like, historically true, and I think it's really, really beautiful, because I think a lot of times and I think it's important, especially for this book and kind of how women are portrayed in history, that we are, like, a lot of times demonized. And I think this is true historically. I just got done watching, like, the TV series Agatha All Along, and I think it kind of plays into this as well. Like, women were seen as witches even if they weren't. And, like, burned on pyres and different things like that, whereas men are the ones who were, like, doing a lot of these atrocities, and they were, like, specifically going after, like, strong, powerful, independent women. And I think, like, that is, like, the biggest takeaway I took from this book is, like, don't be afraid to be a strong, powerful woman. And I think, like, it's just, like, such a good history lesson. I think, like, you can see it throughout, like, a lot of different things, the Salem witch trials, like, including this, in the Spanish Inquisition. I just think it's, like, such a lovely kind of lesson to learn, and I really enjoyed that quote, and I specifically marked that page because I thought it was such an interesting and true quote.
Yeah. I love it. Let's end on that. Let's end on a good note.
Yeah.
Okay, final ratings. If you guys stick with us, I will read it again next year and I will come back to it. But right now, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 because I said this book and I did not drive. We did not get each other, and that is okay. That happens. It does. I feel like this book and, again, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue are the same, where everybody else got it. I did not. So I was like, it's a slog. I'm not understanding it. And again, Sierra and I have said this multiple times throughout this episode. I think it is in the way that we both read it. Right. I think you need time to sit down with it and get acquainted with the characters, get involved in the world, and, like, have time to
marinate,
actually, like,
take notes.
Yes. Read it, take notes, sit with it. So journal about it. Do all the things. Because I was confused and it was a hard start, and then it just, like, didn't get any better from that. From there, but I said, again, I will try next year, And if I don't like it next year, then I understand that it's me and Leigh that have an issue with each other. And that is okay. Again, that is
not
okay.
every book is for every person.
Exactly. So this one was not for me. But I do think partly is because of how I read it. So we will come back in a year. And if it is the same way, then again, it's us. It's fine. It's fine. We don't get each other.
Good.
And that's okay.
You're fine. See, for me, because like I said, it's a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I do believe I put that. And I did put, this is the first time I've like actually more or less written things like on Goodreads. And I said it's like my new favorite book. And I will genuinely like tell everyone about it. And I will say like, you should read this book. And the thing is like, I love reading like long drawn out stories. I can't get enough of it. I love a good series. So like it did make me sad that it wasn't a series, but for a book that's not a series, I got very attached to our 2 main characters and thoroughly enjoyed it, and also enjoyed the kind of stories and lives of all the other characters within this book as well. So
yay. I'm glad.
Super good for me.
I'm glad. I'm glad you loved it. Somebody should. Thanks. I really do think the idea of this book is really great, and I hope that you come out of this thinking that you will like it and that you will enjoy it, because I think like if you take the time to actually read it, digest it, maybe do a little bit of research, like you will like it. Or you'll be like me and do it all the wrong ways and not like it.
Well, also I think like what also drove me to like being like, I love this book, is because the actual like I've read so many fantasy books, and I am aware when someone's not as good as a like writer as they are as good as a storyteller. So like, love it either way. A great story is a great story, but the writing style of this book I think is really what captivated me the most. On top of like these beautiful, amazing characters, the story, but the actual writing itself, I was like, this is just amazing writing. Like just the way she like words things, the way she like her vocabulary, for me it was like I aspire, if I ever write a book, I aspire to do it with as much grace and with the kind of just innate like details that this author really put into the writing. So I very much appreciate it. I was like, oh, no wonder she works at Harvard or something. I think that's right? Yale. Yeah. Sorry. My bad. No wonder she's a professor at Yale. I was like, there is a reason. Sorry, one of the Ivies. But there is a reason. And it's because she's a fantastic writer.
Awesome. I love it. Well, let's get into pairings. So today we will end our show with a segment we call Pairings, where Sierra and I will pick TV shows, movies, and other books, and also a drink that might pair well with today's book. So, drink.
I originally said a sangria, but then you brought up a pomegranate, and I was like, but actually what would be so good is, I think it's called a Prom French 79.
Yeah, is it
it's like it's like a spritzer.
There's a French 70, I think 75.
Oh, maybe it's a Prom French 75. I always get numbers confused.
Gin, lemon juice, simple syrup, champagne. I actually did say a sangria, but I said like a very spicy sangria, like spice filled.
Ooh,
lots of clove, lots of cinnamon, lots of like, just very like sticks with you on the tongue.
Yeah,
kind of sangria.
Yeah, I like that.
Yep. All right, TV show.
Okay, so the thing about it is, like, if we're doing movies, I couldn't really think of a movie too, so it kind of goes, I would say A Discovery of Witches is the TV show that I would go with, which also happens to be a book series, I think, but the TV show, again, you kind of get that historical aspect, but then there's, like, obviously vampires and magic as well, so that's mine.
Love it. Mine was kind of a cop-out because I really couldn't think of one. And then now that I'm, like, thinking about it, I probably would say The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which is, like, the Sabrina Teenage Witch retelling in kind of a more dark form of a young woman coming into her power. But my first initial reaction was just Shadow and Bone. If you want a little bit more Leigh Bardugo, Shadow and Bone is a good one.
Yeah.
Alrighty, book.
Again, Discovery of Witches would work really well. It has that same kind of academia. It feels a little academia in this, even though it's not that much. I also said Dance of Thieves, which is another fantasy series. It's not historical, but I feel like the vibes are very similar. At least they were for me. So it was more about vibes in this one.
I love it. Mine, I have two. So my first one, if we're going down the dark romance side of things, I read a book, I got it from Book of the Month, and now I'm, like, weirdly obsessed with it. and I don't know why, but it's called Phantasma. It is about a young necromancer, and her sister gets involved in this weird competition that you have to go through the levels of hell. And so she ends up going into this competition as well. It's like in this spooky haunted house kind of vibe where you're getting haunted every night. Like ghouls are coming out. Everything's like all crazy. Since she's a necromancer, she can see phantoms, ghosts, ghouls, all the things. And so she falls in love with a phantom.
Okay.
He has white hair. He's ancient. He's hot.
Perf.
It is. You would love it.
I'm sure.
I'm obsessed with it, and I don't know why, and I just, like, gave it away, and I'm like, I feel like I shouldn't have given it away, because I kind of want to read it again. But, it's...
I mean, we could read it.
We could read it. I would read it again. But it's, like, it's fun, because you have, like, almost the Hunger Games aspect of, like, you go into this level, but it's also, like, kind of like Saw, where it's, like, a little gory, and it's a little, like, people getting their heads chopped off, that type of thing. And then you, like, come out of it, and then it's, like, a romance, and then it's just, like, you're getting pulled in all these different directions. I genuinely don't know how the writing is because I flew through this book. I just loved it so much. I was reading it on like every lunch break, every snack break, everything.
That's always so good.
Oh, it's so good. And so if you're looking for like a less complicated, more just like a little smutty, a little, but like a little like Saw and a little like like Hunger Games. It's a weird combination, but if you're looking for something like that, Phantasma is great. Highly recommend. Anyways, it's my new book obsession. Oh, and then my second book, my second book was Babel. If you're going along the lines of like language and magic, Babel's a great example also of like kind of a commentary of like colonization and also just like the influence that language and different cultures have on a society as well. It's a thick boy, but it's really good. R.F. Kuang, just a good book as well. Alrighty, movie.
Movie. I kind of did like a movie series, and
yeah,
it's kind of is, kind of isn't. It's interesting. I did Howard's End, because it kind of gives me a little like, it's like haunting-ish vibes, but also historical. I don't know, like again, it's really just based off of vibes here for me, and I don't know, the vibes feel very similar with that one for me. It's just a little odd. I don't have a like specific reason, and it's more of like a TV. It's a short mini series, so it's like kind of like movie, kind of not. I couldn't really think of like an actual movie that I would say.
That's okay. They actually made a movie of it in 1992. So.
Howard's End.
Mm-hmm. But.
I guess you could also say like maybe Wuthering Heights, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
A little haunting.
A little haunting.
There's not magic, but it feels like magic. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Again, just vibes.
Just
I know
the vibes
my movie was kind of poor as well, and I also, this tells you that there are not enough movies about the topic. But I tried to look up like any like Spanish Inquisition type movies or like taking place at around that time, but I did find Pan's Labyrinth taking place in like 1930s Spain. And Guillermo del Toro directed it, but also again
he's so good.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just have to say, he's
so
like
good.
so good at the creepy, the weird, and also I love his stuff.
I also kept calling it the Labyrinth, so I feel like it was just like meant to be.
Sure.
So yeah,
why not?
A little creepy, a little weird. Yeah, love it.
Bowie, yeah.
Alrighty, well that's it. That's the familiar. Well, our next read should be a little bit more tame in the sense of a little bit more cut and dry, as it is.
I forget what we're reading.
It's an Emily Henry book, which is Funny Story.
Yes. Great. I'm glad you remember.
I didn't remember. I have
She has it written down.
So, here we go. Here's the summary. Daphne always loved the way her fiancé Peter told their story, how they met on a blustery day, fell in love over an errand hat, and moved back to his lakeside hometown to begin their life together. He was really good at telling it, right up until the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend, Petra. Boo. Which is how Daphne's story begins. Stranded in beautiful Waning Bay, Michigan, without friends or family, but with a dream job as a children's librarian that pays the bills, and proposing to be roommates with the only person who could possibly understand her predicament, Petra's ex, Miles Nowak. Scruffy and chaotic, with a penchant for taking solace in the sounds of heartbreak love ballads, Miles is exactly the opposite of practical buttoned-up Daphne, whose coworkers know so little about her, they have a running bet that she's either FBI or in witness protection. The roommates mainly avoid one another until one day, while drowning their sorrows, they form a tenuous friendship and a plan. If said plan involves posting deliberately misleading photos of their summer adventure together, well, who could blame them? But it's all for show, of course, because there's no way Daphne could actually start her new chapter by falling in love with her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex. Right?
Wow. I think she lives in Michigan. I don't know. I haven't actually
she does.
that.
She's
okay, great.
She's Midwest gal. Yeah. So, after hearing the summary, Sarah, do you think you'll recommend it or not?
I do think I'll recommend it. I already like her Beach Read book. And so I think also this one was recommended to me also. So I do think I will recommend it. We'll see.
I would say it's a toss-up because I really liked People We Meet on Vacation, which I hear is also like Emily Henry's not very best book, which is funny, but I really liked it. And then Beach Read I did not love. So it's a toss-up.
It is. Also, they are making People We Meet on Vacation into a movie, which I'm very excited about.
Yes, I am too.
Because it has the girl from My Lady Jane in it.
Ooh. Here we go.
Very excited. But yes, I do think I will recommend it. I think it'll be, I don't know. I like romance. It's contemporary.
Yeah.
I might get confused because I was already confused when you said it.
Well, we'll see.
So maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. So stay tuned for our next episode. But that was The Familiar, and then we're going to really switch gears from Spanish Inquisition to the American Midwest. So,
yeah.
So until next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, that's the show. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked it, please go give it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this episode right now. Leave us a review to tell us what you loved and what books you want us to review next. If you want more book-related content, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at RW Reads Podcast. That's at RWREADSPODCAST at RW Reads Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Until next week, keep your books open and your drink glasses full. Thanks all. Red Wine Reads is a Just Better Media production. Each episode is produced by Jenna Weston and edited by Rayan Ashtar.